Okay. Are we good to go? Hello there. Is this microphone working? Yes, that sounds like it. Hi, welcome back from the break, and I'm here for a fireside chat with Rhianna Pratchett. You probably know her best, of course, from being the PR of the MMO Ryzen from about 15 years ago. And so I thought I'd just start with, how's that going?
Well, one of the weird things about it is people thought I was a PR for about 5 years afterwards, and it was very difficult to shake. I was sort of like a gaming PR, so I used to go into the game and show people around the game. It was a long time ago. I don't know, whatever happened to it? You probably know better than I do.
It's still around. I think it's still on Steam. I think it even has a fan. Who is probably right now, even on Twitch, complaining that I'm a fat guy. Anyway, let's jump into some actual questions, which are a bit more fun. I've been asked, as one of the starting ones, to ask you about your creative process, but I think it's a lot more fun to ask the actual writer question. What's your procrastination process?
Well, I'm very good at the procrastination bit, and also because I have the kind of brain that needs to be doing about 3 or 4 things at the same time, and that's sort of, so I'm always kind of, I'm writing, and then I'll have a movie and pause on my iPad, and I'll have a game or something, and then I'll have a book, and then I'll have a cat that I'm sort of doing, stroking, and so I sort of oscillate between all those things, and somehow in there the writing kind of gets done. I find it difficult to focus in the traditional sense. I think just lots of things going on and keeping different parts of my brain buzzing, and then it allows me to sort of pinpoint when I kind of need to, but I'm always doing more than one thing at the same time.
Do you find it's the case where you sort of need a deadline to kind of, focus in on, or are you quite good at just sort of getting everything done, in advance?
I'm not entirely sure how anything gets done, really, but I'm trained as a journalist, so I have a healthy fear of deadlines, and I think that's kind of really helped me kind of work to a deadline. And I think when you're working freelance, sort of dividing your time and sort of sticking to any kind of schedule is quite difficult. I've always been terrible at that. I actively rebel when I try and schedule myself. I can do a to-do list. I like doing that. I find ticking things very satisfying.
So they're great, kind of colouring them in nicely, kind of having all the formats, and
I did
getting just the right font.
Yeah, but I move around the house, actually. I don't have a specific place to work, so sometimes I'll sort of work on my couch. I've got a little sort of wheelie desk that I wheel around the house, like a hospital, one of those kind of hospital tray desks. And then I'll work in bed, which I call my winter office, and I'll wheel the little desk up there. Sometimes I work in the kitchen.
Laptop, cat, Skype.
Yeah, I think it's just to fool my brain that I'm not really working. If it seems kind of like, just a bit of fun, and if I could get all the little bits of fun chained together, that's how I get all the work done.
Awesome. Well, I think I actually want to go back a bit to the PC Tzone stuff, only very briefly, because I think I was going to put this as an ironic question, but I realised that would make me like many pricks on the internet, so I'm going to rephrase this and sort of do it properly. You quite often see people thinking that for various reasons, perhaps,
the light's gone.
The light's gone. Shit, that means we're in trouble. The light's gone.
The light has gone. Is it supposed to be on? It is supposed to be on.
It's supposed to be on, yeah.
It's not on.
I will pass back and forth. If I get bored of your answer, I'll just kind of go like this. But like I said, it is obviously not something I want to kind of go into in too much detail because everybody freaking does it. But there is sometimes a perception that kind of you've got a lot of stuff, based on sort of family things and so on. And obviously that's not true because we've known each other from your PC Tzone days. And I was kind of thinking that just in general, what for you has been the process of kind of getting to the point where you're doing, AAA stuff, where, people are calling you to work with the likes of, say, Andy Serkis or whatever, when obviously what you started with was, helping out with, like, German RPGs and PRing for forgotten MMOs.
Well, it was a very long process. There were really no shortcuts, and I think, by and large, unless your surname is Trump, there aren't a lot of shortcuts to things in this world.
I'd actually love to see a Trump video game. Maybe the best game ever, just brilliant.
I don't know, it feels like there must have been someone must have done.
Oh, there's one being demoed around the corner.
No, I mean,
Paper drum.
I guess it depends on your kind of personality, but I was always very independent and kind of wanting to forge my own path. And I originally wanted to go into film journalism, and just couldn't find a way in, and then started. Because I studied in London, I studied journalism, and I tried a few like tech magazines, I think, like PC Pro, I think, and they were basically like, yeah, you should go to Games magazine. You're clearly most interested in games. And I started reviewing games for a women's magazine called Minx, which was unprecedented for any women's magazine to cover it at that time, and still, actually. And then PC Gear and then PC Tzone. But I started as a lowly
editorial assistant. Yeah, likewise.
And I think it was my love of Diablo 2 that helped get me the job, because I was really angry about their score, and I just spent a long time ranting in the interview about their Diablo 2 score, and I think Richie Shoemaker, the deputy editor, said when it came out, they'd asked him how it had gone, he said Diablo 2 couldn't shut her up. And so I think that helped, and I had a genuine passion for
So ironically, it's actually kind of similar in that I mostly got started on PC Gamer because I insulted Serious Sam. I got an angry call from, I think, Kieran Gillan, who was a review editor at the time, basically kind of going, what do you mean it's the best game ever? By the way, can you review this shitty fishing game for us? And then I sort of stuck around after that. But let's sort of just jump to the other end of your career, because that's definitely the more fun one. I think something that's always sort of struck me is there are very few celebrity writers in video games. I mean, can anybody in the audience tell me who the writer of Assassin's Creed Black Flag is? Anyone? Because I can't tell you. I wouldn't know if you're right. But in general, when you have the celebrities, they're people like the David Cages, who own the company. They're the Amy Hennigs, who kind of run the entire narrative side, of the Chris Metzons, who basically kind of devised the entire universe. You're basically the only freelance celebrity writer this side of Chris Avalon, and even then I would wager more people know of you than Chris.
Oh, Chris is catching me up, definitely.
Well, he's only got to work on every game ever, and he's working on it.
Yeah, that's very true.
But I was thinking that it's what's interesting is that being in that position where you kind of get a lot of the credit and blame for things without necessarily being the huge part of the projects that people assume you are.
I mean, it really depends on the projects, actually. I think the bigger the team, the kind of harder it is to get your own stamp on it, and you are kind of working with a sub-team within that big team. So, the first Tomb Raider was 2 people working on the writing. On Rise, we'd expanded that to 4, but even that's quite small when you compare it to something like the Witcher teams or the Assassin's Creed teams.
But even with Tomb Raider, you kind of came on after the basic plot had been set up, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
the stuff with Yamatai and setting.
So I mean, that's not really uncommon. Crystal did the sort of set up for the second game as well in sort of pre-production phase. But something like Overlord, I wrote everything that was needed writing on that game, and just kind of all the way through the series. And that probably, because it was a smaller team, has kind of more of my stamp on it. But things like Tomb Raider, you kind of live around the edges, especially the secondary narrative. That's actually what I think the writers on the team tend to like the most, because you don't get the eye of Sauron on the secondary writing so much that you do on this kind of central cinematic script. So that, and the Tomb Raider comics I did as well. I could get a lot of stuff in the comics that I could never get in the game. Like Lara Croft dressed as Elizabeth Bennet fighting bad guys on the London Underground, which I think would be brilliant in a game, but it's no way you're going to do it. But so there was a kind of lot of fun there, and it's a sort of occasional line or things that you've really had to fight and has managed to go through all the levels of people. But yeah, I mean, yes, with Tomb Raider, I've been on the front lines of the kind of narrative department. But I think, and I'm always bigging up the rest of the guys, and they're kind of fine with it, because although I get the praise first, I also get death and rape threats.
Yes, exactly.
So it all kind of balances out. That makes it sound like some from you, Rich.
I didn't say it wasn't. I died a lot in the first Tomb Raider reboot.
Yeah, there was a lot of death. I'm sorry. I feel I need to apologise if that had nothing to do with me. But yeah, I mean, I think also it's being freelance means you can kind of move around between projects faster and easier. You can do more things like this and sort of talk about things. And you also got people like Alex Garland as well. I mean, I think he's sort of gone away from games, but I think he was kind of embedded very well in Slave, for example. But yeah, I mean, freelance writers don't really get the hard power in the industry, like, you know, you Ken Levines and Amy Hennig. So you're sort of very much beholden to the team that you're working with.
So how do you find, you know, the process kind of getting your own voice into the game? I know you sort of said that obviously you'll try to put your stamp on things, but obviously work for hire is work for hire.
Yeah.
They've probably got a specific vision. You know, how much kind of, you know, room is there kind of around the outside to kind of put just that Pratchett touch on it?
Again, it depends on the game. I mean, I think it was very easy with Overlord, because it just sort of kind of my sense of humour suited their sense of humour. It all kind of meshed really well from the off.
Black and cynical and
and it, you know, it was just kind of fun. And you don't get many games that are just kind of fun, and they're built to be fun. It's not just a game with a kind of funny script or funny voice acting. You know, we built it into the level design and the animation and music and everything. With something like Tomb Raider, you know, obviously Crystal do have a vision. They do have a tone that they wanted for Lara and other characters. So you do have to kind of fall into that and kind of find a way of getting your own voice across through that. I mean, it's probably a little. I would have liked to have put a bit more humour into it, but Crystal really wanted a kind of more serious tone, and they didn't want the kind of quippy Lara of yesterday.
Of Legend and so on.
Yeah. I don't. Again, you're very beholden to your team. You spend a lot of time fighting. You know, like games narrative is about 90% fighting, and then 10% actually doing the writing. But you get a good sense of the battles that you need to fight and the hills that are worth dying on, really.
So how much do you find that what you do specifically is writing as in sort of dialogue and, you know, kind of documents and sort in game versus the design side of things? Do you get to kind of have much to do with that?
I mean, there's a lot of narrative design early on, and a lot of kind of invisible work that the players won't ever end up seeing. So it's basically building the body of the iceberg, and the tip is what the gamers will see in the game. But you've kind of got to understand why the world works the way it does, and why the character moves through the world the way they do, and their relationships, and how their character evolves, and the emotional beats and things like that. If you're lucky, that will kind of be done in a linear fashion. With something like Mirror's Edge, everything had been designed with no narrative in mind. The characters just existed as visuals. The city was just a visual. No one knew why it looked like that, why the characters looked like that, why they moved like that. So I had to come in and go,
why don't they just take the stairs?
Yeah. And I just had to. It's a good one. Then I had to kind of answer all the kind of why questions, and you know, why does she parkour across the rooftops, and you know, why does the city look like this, and what happened to make it look like this, and so that was completely done backwards, and that's not really an ideal situation. It sort of limits what you can do, but sometimes boundaries can help make you kind of more creative. So I think, you know, it all kind of worked with Mirror's Edge. Whether it kind of all came through necessarily during the game is another thing, but again, the comics were a good saving grace, and I could put everything I couldn't fit in the game with the comics.
Cool. You also complained, well, not actually complained, but sort of talked quite a lot before about...
I probably complained.
Let's say complained, it sounds more dramatic. You have raged against the system of kind of how kind of writing in games...
That's a Kotaku headline.
Kotaku in action, everyone. Now, have you... But, you've raged about the system where people tend to sort of see narrative as like a layer to be sort of dropped onto the game kind of when it's done. Obviously, this is kind of going back to like the Mirror's Edge type thing. Have you found that's changed in the last few years, kind of people taking it more seriously?
Definitely. I mean, when both of us first started out, like one of the questions going around the industry was,
does the story matter?
Or do we need professional writers?
Yes,
and it's like, well, you have professional artists and programmers. Why wouldn't you want a professional writer? And over the last decade and a half, the industry's gone, well, okay, we'll use professional writers if you insist.
And then we'll bury their credit like 50 screens into the ending.
6.5 minutes into the Tomb Raider.
I do time that.
Yeah, I know you
I bitched about that very loudly on Twitter. And I was very annoyed to see a lot of people kind of go, well, you know, yeah, but you know, writing's not that important. It's like kind of, they put the interns before the writers.
And thanks to our QA partners.
Yeah, exactly. It was ridiculous.
And yeah, but I think the industry has sort of struggled for a while and is still struggling with how to fit writers in. And it is getting better. It's learning to actually the sooner you use them, the better, and the more they can do. A lot of what writers do is It's kind of world building. It's invisible work, but necessary. And they're still not being involved early enough. I think they really need to be there at the start, so they can sort of bring in narrative sensibilities to level design, to mechanics. But we're being involved earlier than we used to be. I mean, you still get the odd kind of narrative paramedic gigs. But I
was going to ask you about that in a second. I love the phrase and I wanted to use it.
It's a good one. I think it was genuinely coined by me, and I've immortalised it on a pin badge. And as we know, that makes it law.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, you still get a lot of those gigs, and people that don't really kind of understand the process of writing, and that it is rewriting, and it needs time. And you're not going to get it right first time, and like everything, it is a process. And there's a lot of people in the industry that think they can write, and they usually have more power than the writers do.
Is that always the case? But I think, do you think part of the problem why a lot of companies are reticent to hire writers is that they know that for their next project they're going to need programmers, they know they're going to need artists, and they know they're going to need like 100 middlemen to tell everyone else what to do? But unless they're kind of working on something which is sort of specifically after like an adventure, an RPG or something, it's all like, well, if our next game's a cart game, what are we going to do with them? You know, or sort of something. And obviously, there's barks, there's menus, and there's documentation. But it sort of feels like writing has a certain prominence only in about 3 genres, and everywhere else it's almost like kind of, we've got to get someone to do this.
I don't know, it seems like most games these days have some kind of narrative. I'd say the kind of action, whether it's first person or third person action games, tend to have more narrative in now than ever before. I actually think that's why freelance works quite well, because it's almost like contractually you can be brought in when you're needed, and then people go quiet as they're trying to make things, and then you can come back in again. And that sort of works quite well, a bit more like the film industry works. But I've worked on a mobile game that actually required a lot of narrative because I was working on characters. I was just like a one-woman character generating machine. That was for Rival Kingdoms, and I think I did about over 50 characters for them, just writing about 400 word bios, which is really good creative exercise. But players used to collect the characters and write songs about the characters.
Well, that's it. It's kind of a lot of people, obsess over IP, but then they kind of forget, that generally if IP works, it's because people genuinely love the thing, and it's very rarely like the main character of a thing. Usually the main character of something is fairly dull because they've got to be the appeal to everyone. Yeah. Whereas you kind of sort of get to like the second, like Tomb Raider's going to go. Obviously, people love Lara Croft, but the standout character of the first game seemed to be Sam. Because she was someone new, she was someone interesting.
There's a lot of Sam haters. There's a lot of Sam lovers and Sam haters. She's a very kind of Marmite character, actually. But yeah, I'm always getting asked about her, actually, which I think.
Yeah, I noticed that the comments were kind of in retrospect. Maybe they could have been gay.
There's it is like
start your fanfic engine.
There's a lot of shipping things. Like the Tomb Raider community are way ahead. Every combination of
and then she wasn't in the sequel. So does Crystal Dynamics hate the potentially gay?
Oh, I sorry, you'd have to ask them. I don't think so. We did think about including her, but kind of we did want Lara, or certainly Krista wanted Lara to have a little bit more of a solo adventure. So
with a guy.
Well, not specifically. No, they wanted her on her own more as that kind of loner that we saw in the previous Tomb Raider games. So we knew we wanted to have fewer characters basically. Then there were too many in the first game. We just didn't have enough space to kind of fully realise them in the way that we would have liked. Hence why they would pop up in the comics. And so we knew we weren't going to have as many characters. And I think we went back and forth about which character was going to return. But Earl, who plays Jonah, is such a sweetheart, and he's so supportive of the game, and he's really kind of enjoyed playing the part. And again, he also sort of keeps in touch with what Jonah's doing in the comics as well. So I think that kind of informs his performance.
So do you find when you sort of talking to people about writing these days, I've noticed that online people don't seem to know what writing is. In that usually, I realise that obviously everyone is aware of the fundamentals. They've played Civilization, but I mean, it tends to be when people talk about writing, what they're talking about is plot, as opposed to kind of dialogue and kind of character side or whatever. I was thinking that on the like your kind of professional side, do you find that that's sort of similar? Like kind of we need a writer for the dialogue, or we need a writer for the story, and obviously not necessarily a specific project, but it's obviously now you work for so many different companies. Like what do you think the view of a writer is at the moment in the genre?
I mean, it's still very sort of writers do the word bits, and that's caused a lot of problems in the past. I think, word bits are easy, anyone can do word bits. Well,
stick it on.
Yeah, stick it in. Yeah, and it'll be fine. And that's how a lot of narrative paramedic gigs come up, because I think in games the word writer scuppers us a little bit, because it makes you think of words, and of course predominantly that's what writers do in things like novels and screenwriting. But a lot of what writers need to be able to do in games is the narrative design, is the kind of world building, is thinking about what the mechanics are saying about the character. And that's one of the things that makes it more difficult when you're freelance, is when you're writing a screenplay, you're in control of the actions of your character, and actions equal character. But with games, someone else is deciding what the actions are, and they probably don't have that much to do with the character. They just have to do with what they're
doing. It's like what's really exciting set piece.
And so you kind of have to take those actions and try and roll them back into the character, and then add like 25% of it's a game, so she probably can't be a complete psychopath, so we've got to make her
I played Tomb Raider, that's not true.
High functioning. I like kind of rolling it into the character. Like there's a little bit of disconnect between, I guess, the level of violence in the gameplay and what that kind of means to characters. But then there's a weird amount of things that we accept as gamers that actually...
Well, there's always kind of been sort of the dichotomy in action films, when the hero will kill 100,000 goons, and then like the bad guy will be kind of, if you kill me, then you're just like me. and it's like, kind of, well, why are you special? It's like kind of, if we killed all of the random guys. Kind of like the deaths which matter because they're kind of characters, they're sort of narrative driven. What I think is that, do you think that using the term writer is a mistake? Because I've noticed a lot of people in writing I actually quite like narrative design as a title, but I've noticed that even a lot of professional games writers really hate it. It's like sort of you're biting on more than you can chew. That's kind of not really kind of your place, and it kind of seems like a weirdly self-defeating.
But they hate the term writer, or they
narrative designer.
Oh, okay. So writers hate the term.
Writers, in my experience, whenever I've spoken to people, when you say that I write games, then great. If you say, I'm a narrative designer, because that's because you don't want to say writer. But do you think kind of maybe that's like the better term that
I don't know. I do think there is a difference in the job. Like writers tend to be more concerned with character and dialogue and plot and the usual stuff. Narrative designers are more concerned by the mechanics by which the story is told. So how gameplay and story intersect. Now, a writer should be involved in that side of things, and I've always worked. When there has been a narrative designer, closely with the narrative designers. So on something like Overlord, I was my own narrative designer, and I think on the second one of the designers who liked narrative sort of became my narrative designer. On Tomb Raider, it was John Stafford, who's a senior narrative designer and the only narrative designer on it. He also wrote, but I work with narrative designers that don't. They usually can write, but they're not writing on the project. They're just sort of overseeing everything and corralling the writers. But yeah, I think that it's much more linked to design than kind of a writer role is. But writers do need to be linked with design. I mean, it is the facet of games that writing is most sort of linked to.
Also, I wouldn't suggest that writers have to be programmers and so on, but do you think it would help if more writers were actually involved in the implementation of things? Scripting, say, rather than programming, but still a bit more kind of hands-on, kind of a bit more...
I think with maybe the testing, I wouldn't necessarily say that they need to be involved in coding, but they do need to be maybe QA testing, seeing when lines are triggering and things like that. There's a kind of lot you could do with that. And I did a bit of that in the first Tomb Raider, where they were just sending me play blast of the levels, and I was just writing notes going, please stop having her say, I can do it every 5 minutes. that note was not listened to. like, oh, you know, that line is not, that's triggering too early, too late. Have we got another performance of that line?
Well, I know when they were making Portal 2, they sort of said that basically it's funny because they could kind of get down there and like adjust lines like a half second or so. You know, get absolutely precise in a way that I think probably the writers are going to care about more than anybody else. They have like that, again, that sort of vision of why it's funny and kind of why
the timing and things. Yeah, I mean, I did a little bit on that on the second game for Overlord. I mean, the bigger the team, the more levels of people there are to do that. And stop either you wanted to do that or kind of needing to do that, really. So it's a lot easier to kind of mess about in the guts of the game with smaller teams.
And do you find that you're generally working from home or kind of working on site these days?
I kind of go on site to fight and go home to write. There's still a lot of fighting on the way through. And so, I mean, most projects I will kind of go over and spend time with the team, and I think we sort of adjusted our process more between first Tomb Raider and Rise, where they would actually I would have meetings in the morning and then let me go back to my hotel room and write, and then deliver it in the evening, and then they'd go through it, and because offices are not conducive to writing really, and I spent a long time locked in rooms in Crystal Dynamics sort of going through stuff, but so much gets worked out on the page, and you do need time for writers to work stuff out on the page, and that, you know, understanding that it's an iterative process and it won't kind of work first time, and you need to keep going back and adjusting things just generally for the writing, and then you've got factoring in what's happening in the gameplay. You'll be, you know, constantly rewriting.
Well, do you find that kind of lends to a sense of kind of being the outsider, you know, kind of doing an input, but kind of like not just not being present, but maybe for all of the meetings or for the again, you see this kind of part of the reason why writers are sort of off to one side in the development process.
I mean, I always knew that it was a trade-off. I knew I was sort of trading power for freedom. But for me, you know, the freedom was more important. The freedom to work on different games at the same time, the freedom to work in different disciplines that would help strengthen me as a writer. I do realise I kind of make that trade-off. That's why I'm sort of so beholden to the people that are on the front lines sort of fighting. But it's we kind of think of it like a raid group, and like the creative director and the narrative designer are the tanks, and I'm the kind of long-range DPS that they're having to protect.
So anything that goes wrong is your fault.
Well, they're supposed to be protecting me, but like especially with all the kind of the feedback on Rise, because we opened up the script and the story very early for feedback to try and make sure that we didn't have any kind of 11th hour issues. And although that we didn't have 11th hour issues, it did mean that we had
1 o'clock hour issues.
3, 5, 6 issues. But it was just constant headwind. I don't know if you've seen the GDC talk we did, but constant headwind of feedback all the time. And then sort of John was having to kind of actually just filter it, because you know, some of it was just not kind of relevant.
Yeah, if you show everyone everything, they're just going to melt their heads. I mean, obviously we mentioned kind of comics, we're kind of running out of time at this point, but you mentioned your comic books earlier on, and obviously normally I'd like to ask more about those, but I think what interests me is that you've now done games, you've done journalism, done comics, obviously you're now moving into film stuff. Obviously you've done some stuff on that already, but do you find that the success and experience of like games and comics actually means a damn thing kind of outside our field, or do you think that you're sort of starting from scratch whenever you approach a new medium? I think
certainly I found that people are kind of interested in me as, this is someone doing something that we don't really know much about, and especially if I meet other writers who've never worked in games, they sort of treat me as if I've come from Narnia. And yeah, I mean I think that there's definitely an interest, and there's been a growing kind of interest in kind of what games are up to, because I think there's been a kind of a lack of understanding really, but certainly as kind of generation of gamers grow up, and we've got sort of a younger Hollywood who are kind of gamers, it's got more focus. Unfortunately, you cannot cash in the points you've earned in one medium to carry over at least if it's games, I think games went through a phase, as you know, of
if you were a Hollywood director, you'd make anything you wanted.
Any didn't matter what you'd written. Like you would just obviously come in with your magic pixie dust and
you would save games.
Yeah,
you just have to make them more like films.
So I think going from games, I haven't been able to cash in my points, but I enjoy the challenges of learning to write for other mediums, and I think games is maybe very robust. Like it really knocks the ego out of you, I think. You kind of like you get pummeled a lot, especially in AAA development. You get a lot of pummeling, so that. When you're kind of working in film and TV and you're getting a whole stretch where you're allowed to be in charge of the scripts and the characters, even if that gets taken away from you, given to a director, it feels luxurious. It's like going from a bath to a swimming pool.
I mean, are there any kind of big licenses that you'd love to kind of make your mark on?
Well, I would have said Thief until I worked on a Thief game, and then that went terribly. Sorry about that.
Do you want to like? I was thinking it, and I was thinking I can't really say that.
Well, there is a reason I don't talk about it,
and that is
it went terribly. It just went. It was just one of those projects where like the whole team gets changed and. The whole vision gets changed, and I wasn't involved in the last year of development of it, and there's a lot of kind of everything we wanted at the start all seemed to get changed.
I really like the bits that were straight from Dishonored, if that helps.
I think that there was certainly a worry because there's a Pratchett in
there is Jelly Deals,
and they thought that that was I think there was actually a worry on the Thief team that I'd been secretly telling Dishonored people what we were doing Arcane, and then that was their like little tell about it. And I mean in Dishonored I only knocked out Mr. Pratchett and then put him carefully onto a bed, so I just left him there. It was a very difficult project that went through a lot of design changes, and it was not as I would have liked, and probably a lot of people would have liked. I think it was a shame because again, there's some Thief comics as well, and I kind of know how to do that sort of pseudo medieval sort of cityscape and.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the atmosphere of Thief wasn't its issue. I think it was definitely kind of more on like the core mechanics and kind of the engine. But I don't think many people had that much of a problem, I say, with the look and the feel of it, and kind of certainly the mood of the city. I think the new Thief nailed the feel of the city in a way that the previous games hadn't.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of sort of secondary narrative that sort of never got in there. As far as I'm aware, I think there's just a lot of things changed in the last year, and obviously we did start off in the early days with Stephen Russell as Garrett, and like he's the Garrett of my heart. And he and
the core of your head.
And he was kind of lovely to work with, and obviously all that changed for reasons. And it was I'm a big kind of lover of Thief, but I actually watched a very interesting video where people were comparing, I think maybe Thief 1 and just you realise that a lot of it is about what is kind of expected of gamers, constant hinting, for example, not letting kind of gamers roam in the world and get lost and things, and you do see that in lots of games where the character's giving kind of constant hints, or the world is giving constant hints. I don't know how that happened, but it is really industry-wide, but it does sort of change the feel of a game.
Well, everything's now marked, and I think to some extent it has to be. I mean, just because in Thief you have like kind of the white paint where you kind of climb up on something, but you look at the maps, and like unless they do that, like there's invisible walls everywhere, there's no way of sort of telling like the fidelity's kind of gone so good, but equally the levels have to be kind of fairly compact, otherwise it all falls apart. I mean, what the again, we've only got a couple of minutes left. One thing I was going to ask is just that I imagine quite a lot of people here and certainly watching on Twitch aren't just kind of players of adventure games. I'm sure there are many of those as well. But I'm sure a lot of people are working on their own things. They are kind of, looking to kind of create things. Maybe they're hoping to kind of get into the industry, kind of writing and designing and so on. And I was thinking, to some extent, the writing side, how social do you think it is at the moment? Do you think that there's like a writing community, or is it kind of everyone for themselves?
No, I mean, you've met the kind of writing.
Well, yes, but the thing is, if I just say it, then I'm not really asking you a question.
Yeah, I guess
sorry to Andy.
I mean, there is a writing community in the UK. It's very small, everyone knows each other, and there is a kind of wider writing community because we are kind of deep in the trenches, so we're always sharing war stories. The Narrative Summit at GDC is a good place for meeting lots of other writers. There are sort of Andy Walsh, who worked on the Prince of Persia games. Jim Swallow worked on the Deus Ex games. Tom Joubert, who's
FTL
and Penumbra. They're probably kind of some of the main ones, and we've been meeting up for beers and to sob on each other's shoulder for years now, and I think that's very cathartic. Marek Walton, who's now at Crystal Dynamics, Maurice Suckling, the Mustard guys. There's a kind of a few of us about, and we're always sort of passing on work to each other, and that's probably the main thing about kind of networking and meeting other writers is. I got Overlord because Jim passed it over to me because he said, I'm more kind of sci-fi, this might suit Rhianna better.
Yeah, I got one because Emily Short couldn't do it.
Okay.
And so kind of, again, it's just nice to spread it around.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in Prince of Persia with Andy, he worked on Heavenly Sword with me. It's all, there is a community there, and we do try and be as supportive of each other as possible.
And I think I'll just finish off with one last one again. One of the more mercurial ones. How do you think that both developers should approach writers and vice versa? Both for kind of hiring people, like if for people who want to get into it, what's their first step to actually kind of get
very gently, so as not to scare them.
Very, very gently.
Gently.
Ideally, don't sort of start screaming into the microphone and kind of going,
carrying tea and biscuits. And I do actually think that this is an issue for a lot of developers, that they don't actually know where to find writers, and would really like some kind of writer zoo somewhere that they can just visit and have a look at all the writers. The Narrative Summit is again at GDC. That's a great place to kind of meet writers, and it's most kind of networking and referrals. Actually, everything I've got, I've either been referred by another writer or someone else I've worked with, or famously with Mirror's Edge, it was to do with a gay tortoise.
I said one last question. Hold that story.
Ben Cousins, who worked at DICE, lived in the same tiny Somerset village as me, and his male tortoise used to escape from his garden and come and sort of snuggle up with my male tortoise. And then they sort of, for a long time, they lived this kind of. They gave us their tortoise, and they kind of lived this kind of tortoise kind of semi-homoerotic kind of Holmes and Watson with tortoises relationship.
So is that they investigate cases very slowly, but they get there in the end. That's how I knew Ben. He kind of sort of remembered me. Thought that girl likes tortoises. Clearly, she's the one to write cyberpunk query game.
I got work on Bioshock Infinite because of a kind of a friendship I'd made 10 years ago with Tim Gerritsen, who was then worked at the studio, and we just had friends in common, and we went shooting guns at an gun range and eating steak, and then 10 years later it turned into a job on Bioshock Infinite.
That sounds like a perfect starting point.
So I mean, it feels. It's a huge industry, but it also, from the writing side, it feels.
It does feel fairly sort of small. Yeah. Fairly, everyone knows each other. From what at least what I've had, like almost everybody will have a story about somebody else. Will kind of know what more or less everyone else is working on. But basically, to get involved with it, network, do a lot of writing. Ideally, have a gay tortoise. I think those are words to live by, and I think we'll probably call it there, unless there's anything else you want to tack on the end.
No.
In that case, we'll call it there.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.